Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another episode of From the Cheap Seats Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Branson. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about NXT Battleground. We're going to talk a little about Monday Night Raw, the go-home show before Clash at the Castle there in Glasgow, Scotland, for all my Scottish kin out there. I mean, that kind of makes sense right here. Um, just I know it's been a minute since I've dropped a podcast on y'all. Been dealing with some personal off-screen stuff. Nothing bad. Just taking care of my dad. Also spending time with my daughter. It just kind of, you know, rejuvenating and refreshing the soul and kind of taking some rest. Still on the job search. So this is still going to be something I do regardless of employment or not. We're not going to be controversial per se on here, so that way it doesn't get me in trouble with future employers. But still, you're going to get a pro wrestling perspective from a combat veteran. And hopefully, like I said, wish long term is this gets to a bigger audience. I can have people on here put over their stuff, even get sponsored by some veteran-owned businesses, so that way I can build some revenue for bigger and better equipment. With that being said, I didn't even do notes today. That's kind of how excited last night was in my mind. I thought that NXT Battleground, was an amazingly good show. The venue was a little different. We're used to the Performance Center, to the Capitol Wrestling Center, a nod to the Jess McMahon era of professional wrestling and the territories. But the UFC Apex, now you obviously see people in the stands around an octagon, but this time it was different. And the venue is smaller, so you kind of have to work a little tighter in certain spots. But ultimately, it gave you that indie show vibe in regards to the ring setup, how they could get it done there in Vegas with limited space. I'm sure that this is not the last time we see a WWE event from the Apex. It was a good starter show. Now, I mean, I read the dirt sheets, and half the time I don't even believe them. But there was some, and we got the Scuttlebutt sessions today, and I am a little loaded for bear, so bear with me. And also, just to let people know, I got reached out by a certain legend in this business, a Lucha Libre legend, that is, manager of wrestlers, of great Lucha Libre stars, the inductor of the greatest mask of all time, and one of I believe he's a former veteran himself, as well. Had a really crappy first gimmick with WWE. If you remember, he was under the mask of and name of Max Moon when he was with WWE, I believe. Conan. And it's going to be cool because he's going to shout out the podcast this week. I hope. If he doesn't, that's cool too. But it was cool that he reached out. I'm going to give his podcast a little love. So, keeping it 100 with Conan and Glenn Gilbert at Disco Inferno. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Disco Inferno, never was. And some of his points of view counter mine, but I'm not gonna rub dirt on the man. He provides back still to his community in regards to a perspective that wrestlers have. That being said, let's go to NXT Battleground. We're gonna go up the card. It was well booked. It didn't have too many matches so you weren't completely overwhelmed or sensory overloaded. And right off the bat, they all fired. They all did well. I am very happy that, the talent that got to perform on this show were given the chance to awe and inspire a next generation, especially on two wrestling companies, and we'll get to that later. But with starting the ladder match, the Women's North American Championship ladder match. Uh, 6 of the best talent, women's talent, right now in NXT. And that's not discounting a Ren Sinclair, Ariana Grace, a Brimley Reese, and any of those women that are coming up and trying to make a name for themselves. I won't disagree with Vic Joseph very much. I kind of think it's a 50-50 tie between NXT and TNA in regards to their women's divisions. In a very close, second place with AEW. I think AEW is getting around to what they need to do with their women's division. But like I said, more established, more recognized, more quality matches would be your TNA knockouts and your NXT female superstars. Fallon Henley, Lash Legend, Jada Parker, Kalani Jordan, Sol Ruka, and Mia Yim, they put a hell of a show on last night. And, it was nice to see that Mia Yim, like she has in past ladder matches, was more than willing to take the bumps necessary to sell the match. There were really good spots. I mean, the soul snatches off both the turnbuckle, the rope, and the ladder made Sol Ruka stand out. Jada Parker, hard hitting. She's going to be a force to reckon with in the women's division, no doubt. Lash Legend. Now, self-admittedly, I wasn't necessarily the biggest Lash Legend fan when I first started. Kind of what hoped she would have disappeared. Boy, has she shut me up. And has she changed my perspective and my opinion about her talent. For a taller woman that she is, she is learning and has done very well to make her size and the chemistry within the match of her height work, even with smaller female talent. And she capitalizes a lot, really well, on the size of the person she is. I believe she's 5'11", 6 foot tall, even, actually. So that is not a bad thing to be a taller woman. But sometimes in wrestling, you kind of have to learn the chemistry and the flow. And I believe Lash Legend has done that. Does she deserve an NXT title run, a Women's North American Championship run? You damn right she does. The fact that she was willing to take the big woman bump with that Team Gorilla Press speaks volumes to her growth in the company. A lot of ladder matches is a bit of sacrifice to the body, and that's what you saw with Michin, with a lot of all the women that were in there, willing to take the bumps off the ladder, on the ladders, that kind of thing. It's not easy. I'm almost certain to fall flat back on a ladder. So kudos to all the women. Michin, a veteran presence in that ring. Like I said, probably was the architect of how that match went. So that's the reason why you saw the quality of that ladder match as good as it was. Who am I leaving out here? I talked about Fallon Henley, Lash Legend, Jada Parker, Sol Ruka, Kalani Jordan. If you didn't see her becoming that first Women's North American champion coming, you are fooling yourself. Yes, there were many women that were equally as deserving as Kalani Jordan, but that woman to go from and a shout out to Dana, I mean Ash by Elegance. Sorry there, forgot. It's the multiverse, pro wrestling multiverse these days. To start out with her and to blossom and grow into this talent that they are trusting, uh, being essentially the old school way of thinking, it was the number one contender to the top championship, the women's championship. But this, I believe, with Kalani Jordan will set a standard for mid card titles, especially with the rumors that Raw and SmackDown will receive women's mid card. So that way, their workhorses in the female division get recognized. So it'll be interesting to see when that happens how they're going to go about it, how they're going to build it, how they're going to make it happen. She was the right person in the right moment to be in this spot. She is safe. She does the work in the ring to make you go, wow, I just watched that. And some of the things about her with the gymnast background from the Big Ten, I believe Vic Joseph said last night. The collegiate pedigree that is exhibited and seen in that ring with Kalani Jordan showed out a lot last night. A lot of those spots were really crisp, really, didn't feel practiced, didn't feel cookie cutter, but I don't believe the women took gross risks to their bodies and with this match, which is not a bad thing because you would rather longevity to your body than, but the match looked pretty good without any major botches or flops or whatever. Like I said, I'm still remembering when watching Lash bounce off the ladder after getting gorilla pressed out of the ring. Still impressive that she was willing to take that bump. Uh, Going from there, we're going to talk a little bit about the Good Brothers versus Axiom and Nathan Frazer. Now, Nathan Frazer and Axiom want to make their mark as a team. Who better to go up against and make that stand out than the big LG, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson, Chad Too Bad, and Sex Ferguson of Southpaw Regional Wrestling fame. Those two gentlemen are legends in this business, and they're still not done. And yes, Frazer and Axiom went over, but let me tell you, when you're getting a win off a team like the Good Brothers, that speaks volumes because Axiom and Nathan Frazer, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson are sitting there saying, hey, we trust you with this. Don't sleep on us. We'll be back. But believe us, we're impressed with where you could take this. And I don't see that feud, and I don't see those two teams ending this nice little battle between the two anytime soon. I really do think that they're going to come back to it at a certain point, and possibly even the Good Brothers get a small builders run with the NXT Tag Team titles, so they can help build the tag team division down there in Orlando. Because what's wrestling without tag teams? What's wrestling without quality women's talent or men's talent? So you kind of got to build your divisions, obviously. And that's what I see partly outside of their involvement in the Cody Rhodes AJ Styles feuds on SmackDown. That's why they're there, to help build the NXT tag team division. tag team division in NXT used to be really hot, used to be a staple of the brand. And that's what I think the OC, the Good Brothers, are doing down there, is helping establish, Nathan Fraser and Axiom at the top, and then kind of fill in the spots below them so that, there's a variety of different styles of professional wrestling shown on television. And plus, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson are experienced vets. So I'm pretty sure their voices are being heard there by Shawn Michaels and Terry Taylor and Steve Corino and Matt Bloom and Norman Smiley, Robbie Brookside, and the whole lot. Sarah Amato needs mentioning. Obviously there were a lot more women's matches than men's matches on that card last night. There was more women talent for the first time, I believe, in any NXT Peacock or PLE/network special that were on television than the men. So that's a big step forward too. It was a really good match. Like I said, Good Brothers took really good bumps, really sold Axiom and Nathan Fraser as credible tag team champions. When you see these odd couples pairing, a lot of times it doesn't stick out. It doesn't stay together. Axiom and Nathan Fraser, for what their skill set, their speed, and what they do, really does actually work if you look at it. So good to see Nathan Fraser and Axiom get the deuce. It is always great to see the Good Brothers, doing the thing for the business. And I expect, like I said, this isn't the end for these two tag teams. Moving on from there, we're going to go into the Wesley, Joe Coffey, Obafemi match for the NXT North American Championship. That was a really good triple threat. And, how Obafemi is not world heavyweight or WWE champion at this point. I mean, this guy has probably had the rocket ship attached to his ass and set in space long before he got on TV. That's how good he is. And he's young. And there is a long history that young man is going to have in the professional wrestling business because he knows he's that good. But he's also safe. Very, very much safe with the two smaller opponents. Now, that's not to say Joe Coffey is small. But, Obafemi is a skyscraper in comparison to Joe Coffey and Wesley. The best part of this match goes to Wesley, though. To see him be able to do the stuff that he is known for, whether on a singles or a tag team run with Zachary Wentz when he was with NXT. And I think after you saw that post-match attack, you see where Wesley is going to source for some backup. We'll talk about that in a minute. But these three styles, Joe is more of a brawler, but he can be technical. Oba is a powerhouse, and he uses that skill real well. Wesley is a high flyer. He is more of a daredevil style professional wrestler, but his spots make sense, matter to the build, the structure, and the finish a lot of times of those matches. Whenever he was champion. And honestly, all three styles meshed to make a really good triple threat match. That gorilla press onto Joe Coffey from the top rope, or at least the second turnbuckle, had to have been 20 feet high that Wesley came down on Joe Coffey. Still sits in my head right now. It was one of the best spots of the match. But like I said, with Wesley being able to do his moveset, to see that young man be able to get back and compete in this business after having major back surgery and a major back issue like he had. A lot of people don't necessarily come back from certain. You could ask Randy Orton right now how his back feels, and he, I believe, had the same surgery Wes Lee did. So, all honesty, the MVP of the match, the winner of the match is Obafemi. The MVP for standing out in a comeback, hell, even best comeback, if there was such an award, would probably be to Wes Lee. And Joe Coffey plays a good, hard-nosed Scottish heel. And if this singles run he potentially is on is to make him a threat in either the North American or the NXT Championship divisions, so be it. There's just one more body, one more resource that NXT can go to in the long run to build stars, to make their championships matter, to get more eyes on the product on television. I mean, I love Gallows' snark, especially Joe Snark on Twitter. So excited to see more from Gallus, whether it be from Wolfgang, Joe, or Mark. I know that this isn't the end of the chase for Wes Lee and Obafemi to meet up in regards to the NXT North American Championship, because I hate to say it, Wes Lee has made and established that championship in regards to attaching his name to said championship. Moving to NXT Underground, Shayna Baszler and Lola Vice. Now, I will admit that, two legitimate former MMA talent being in there in a worked shoot fight is sometimes difficult to do, especially when it's not caged. It's four-cornered like a wrestling ring is, let alone the element of if a talent goes outside of the ring or off the ring, and they have to engage in whatever battle there. But, it looked like an underground, what I guess you would call an underground match. It looked like very street fightish. Those women looked like they threw some legitimately decent chops at each other. And I don't mean the backhand knife edge. I'm talking Jack Johnson and whatever Ron Burgundy said with that one. But long term, Lola Vice. I was rooting for Shayna, not going to lie. But Lola Vice is building why she is in NXT, why she is a WWE talent, regardless of her ties to Bellator or UFC or MMA in general. Not necessarily a fan of dancing, but hey, it's her gimmick. And if it brings her happiness, have at it. Not gonna dismiss it, or sit on there and crap on it, because you know what? At the end of the day, what makes your character, what sells it to the crowd, and why the people's asses are in their seats, if they can be tied back to you, is a much better thing in the long term than somebody who's a fly-by-night, flash in the pan, just shows up when they ever want to and then disappears. Lola is a threat to Kalani Jordan. She is a threat to the NXT Women's Champion, Roxanne Perez, which that's next into what we're going to get to. But Lola Vice, the fact that she got the TKO on Shayna Baszler, who is a pioneer herself of the women's MMA movement, a former member of Team Rousey from The Ultimate Fighter, along with Marina Shafir and others. The sky's the limit for Lola and Shayna. You know, I would love to see the badass NXT Queen of Spades Shayna Baszler back. And hopefully we get that with this alliance with Zoe Stark. But I would turn Shayna back into the badass, dominant, cuts through a division, you know, standard for women's wrestling in WWE. After that match, we had one of the two main events of the night, the co-main event, if we're going to talk about in the ways of UFC, since it was in the Apex. And a historic moment at that for professional wrestling. Now, it's famously known that Vince McMahon was very close-minded to doing business with other companies. If it fit the moment for him back then, like Smoky Mountain or NWA through James Cornette or ECW and Paul Heyman, or even the ties, if it's beneficial to the McMahon then brand of WWE, then okay, he gets involved. But in regards to working outright with other companies, up until about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe, and especially, you know, we wouldn't have seen Carl Anderson be able to go over and drop the Openweight Championship like he did back then. Now, you do. Shinsuke Nakamura being able to go over for Muda's match. Asuka and Io Sky potentially being involved. Asuka, Io Sky, and Kairi Sane. Let me fix that up. Potentially being involved in this coming tour of Japan, I believe, at the end of next month. You wouldn't have seen that. Not back then. Not under Vince McMahon. But this Triple H, Nick Khan, TKO era of WWE, sky's the limit in the moments that we're about to get. And for the first real moment of crossover professional wrestling between the WWE and another company, which that being TNA, second longest existing company currently to WWE. I couldn't have thought of a better crossover superstar and a person to challenge for the NXT Women's Championship than a Jordynne Grace. I mean, you've seen Jordynne Grace's resume. It doesn't have to be explained. The Juggernaut is a bad BUI. You know what I'm about to say. That woman can go in a ring. Earrings, on the other hand, a little bit of an issue lately, but besides the point. The fact that the first prohibited portal superstar, since Triple H doesn't like Forbidden Door, it's a stupid term in his belief, and I can understand that. Having Jordynne Grace come from TNA, which I wish was still a Scott D'Amore led TNA, but that's for another day, another time, another 30 minutes or so of bitching about why that is. But it was a good hard-hitting match. Those two worked real well together. It was strange to see a female talent at sometimes getting the better of Jordynne Grace, because usually Jordynne Grace, she sells well, she puts out well, has amazing chemistry with whoever she works with. But seeing it in a WWE style, or trying to mix WWE style with other professional wrestling company style or school style, it really didn't matter. Roxanne Perez stood out as the champion that we all knew and expected she was going to be 2 years ago when she came into the company. Uh, the same with Jordynne Grace and TNA. She has made the Knockouts title stand larger and louder in that one moment than her predecessors. And that's not to diss Tara, Mickie James, Angelina Love, Velvet Sky, Madison Rain, Gail Kim, Awesome Kong, and the list goes on, all the way up to the Naomi's or Trinity Fatu's, and even Tessa Blanchard. Jordynne Grace has made that TNA Knockouts Women's Championship on a whole different platform, pedestal, level than what the business thought it could be years ago. Back when, who knew TNA was going to get past the first 10 years? And just this last Thursday had their 20th anniversary show. Now, I mean, I listened to Matt Camp, and I believe, Matt Camp this morning point out that the 20th anniversary show, or was it yesterday's Busted Open? It may have been Jonathan Hood, one of those two men. Really good analysts and understanders of the wrestling business as well. About TNA not necessarily hearkening to the prior years of TNA or NWA TNA once they broke away from NWA, the rebrand to Impact, the co-branding with Global Force Wrestling, and then just getting rid of Global Force as Jeff Jarrett moved on, and returning between Impact and again TNA. That woman has sat atop the mountain, is sitting atop the mountain as a history maker, a record breaker. I know I'm stealing a line from Dave LaGreca when he describes Mickie James, but in reality, Jordynne Grace is everything I just said. Yes, it was not necessarily my hope that Jordynne Grace would lose. I would have thought it really interesting to have the NXT Women's Championship and the TNA Knockouts Championship on both television programs, Impact and NXT. And it still may happen. This weekend at Against All Odds, which I will be watching that show this weekend, Jordynne Grace has an open challenge, and we kind of already got the hint the last week or so about who's going to show up for the open challenge, but I don't think this is the last you see Jordynne Grace and Roxanne Perez lock it up, and especially Jordynne Grace. This isn't the last time she gets a chance at the NXT Women's Championship, so I'd be very careful saying that this isn't going to happen again, because you never say never in WWE. I mean, hell, Ethan Page is point positive of that fact. I think, whether I wanted Jordynne Grace, the right person went over in the moment. It really makes all of the Roxanne doubters shut their godforsaken faces when it comes to what her worth is in regards to NXT and as a professional wrestler, especially with the pedigree and the training she had gotten here in Texas at Reality of Wrestling under Booker T. It just goes to show that what Booker T puts out as talent is also really good on screen. And he's getting to watch some of his students do him proud while being able to call their matches. Now, I just said something about somebody with a little bit of, or all bit of ego in Ethan Page. He and Trick Williams. Now, I believe even Ethan Page, I might be wrong about one other person, and I believe I am. I'm not sure. But I believe Ethan Page is the only talent in NXT history for his first wrestling match to be for a championship in WWE, whether it's NXT, SmackDown, or Raw. I mean, not many talent have that respect or that ability to earn that right as you coming right in the door. Ethan can talk, he can wrestle. I don't know if some of the spots seemed a little deadpanned, like the slam spots, but you know, I've watched Ethan Page wrestle. I know he's good. So it's just a matter of getting the chemistry and the timing and the moment down, I guess. Trick went through a struggle against Ethan Page. I'm not gonna lie. So I still see Ethan Page after last night as a threat to Trick Williams, whether Trick or Ethan like it or not. But Ethan Page is right where he needs to be in WWE, regardless if it's black and gold, it's blue and white, or it's red and black. He is right where he needs to be. And he, like he said, it took him 17 years. Like it took AJ Styles, I believe, 19 years to finally get to WWE, to really actually be a contracted WWE superstar. And to get to witness that moment for that young man, it has to be really special. Same thing with Trick Williams. When he had his first match, when he went through his first run, running for the North American Championship and running into Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes for the NXT Men's World's Champion. Trick is the standard bearer right now. Trick is showing you why they trust him with that championship. And I do not blame NXT and Shawn Michaels and the powers that be for putting that scarf of trust, that championship belt around his waist, because he shows why he is worth the effort in putting a quality match as their champion, out. All in all, I'd say if I had to rate NXT last night, it got a 8.9 out of 10 for me. I know there are going to be people like, oh, well, I don't see how you NXT, like the TV. What I say about Dynamite, NXT does so much better. NXT makes both their weekly shows and their specials or their pay-per-view PLEs matter. They all tie in. The momentum doesn't just stop on Tuesday. It goes to a Saturday or Sunday show. And that's a good thing. And I know that there's enough former NXT talent and coaches from the former coaches from the Performance Center that work for AEW now that hopefully they can take a Dynamite. The pay-per-views make sense. The pay-per-views do well. Outside of World's End being what that was, Revolution, Dynasty, Double or Nothing were all great shows. If you can make the Dynamites and the Collisions work together or work better so that the symbiosis from a weekly show to a pay-per-view has that same energy, that same momentum, AEW is going to go places. But back to NXT, all in all, NXT, especially under Shawn Michaels, it does not miss. Yes, we're going to be left sometimes scratching our head, but like, why'd they book it that way? Well, I'm not Shawn Michaels. I'm not the creative powers that be. I can't really speak to what they want to do. I am just a combat veteran who is a almost 40-year fan of professional wrestling with a point of view. And NXT does not miss. When it gets exposure and attention from the main roster, and main roster talent want to make an appearance there, that speaks volumes to NXT. With that being said, Shawn Michaels and his staff cooked a 5-course meal. 6-course, because the dessert on the cherry on the top being Trick and Ethan Page proved that NXT will leave the audience well fed, whether it's casual or it's your hardcore fan or something in between. They do the work. Next, we're going to move on real quick. I'm not going to stay too long on tonight's Monday Night Raw. It's Go Home Show. The Clash before the Clash at the Castle. And what are we going to see tonight? Well, I think we're going to see a little bit of the feud of the two Raw women's tag teams and Jade and Bianca. So for those watching, Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark on one side, women's tag team champions in the middle, and Isla Dawn and Alba Fire. Now, I don't know if they've dropped that whole unholy union thing, because Isla Dawn gives me more smoke show than she does witch vibes right now. So, yeah. Anyhow, I think you're gonna see a clash tonight. You're gonna see at least a match, probably between the two heel tag teams, with an appearance from your women's tag team champions, the Intercontinental Champion. We are going to see kind of where the direction of the future Alpha Academy, American Alpha, Team Gable, whatever you want to call it, is headed. I see a completed face turn for Otis coming, but it's going to be really interesting. And I'm not a fan necessarily of Sami Zayn dropping championships shortly after he's won them, but I think there is a premise and a reason, especially next month, as to why Sami Zayn is potentially dropping to Chad Gable, and that's fine. Braun Strowman versus the Judgment Day. I wouldn't think it out of the realm of possibility that somehow Braun Strowman versus Finn Balor and JD McDonough match doesn't show up Saturday at Clash of the Castle. The bumps and spots the last couple of weeks kind of point in that direction. What else is there? Liv Morgan and wherever they're going with Liv Morgan, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, Dom, where they're going to go with that, I don't know. Obviously, you're going to get a pissed off mommy when she comes back from her shoulder injury. And like I said, I think you're leading to a Balor, Morgan, Mysterio, McDonough Judgment Day with Priest and Rhea eventually breaking off and doing maybe the Terror Twins running gimmick. Who knows? But that's where I see things potentially going here shortly. But with that being said, ultimately, we're going to get to the top of the card for Clash at the Castle. I think this is going to be the match that headlines, obviously because of who's in it and where this is eventually going. So, my head says Drew McIntyre is taking the championship in Scotland. My heart says that with some kind of chicanery and some involvement from not only our King of the Ring, Gunther, but a little bit of mischief from everybody's Second City Saint, favorite Second City Saint, mind you, CM Punk, that Damian Priest could actually leave this match this weekend with the championship, or retaining the championship. So it's going to be interesting to see. Maybe we get Punk interfering with Priest instead of McIntyre. Who knows? But all in all, I expect a pretty heavy-hitting Raw. I believe also Ilya Dragunov, Ricochet, and Braun Breaker are a part of this. I believe there's a triple threat match between those three tonight. And Ricochet, we'll get to the Skullbutt sessions about him, but obviously this is believed to be his last Monday Night Raw, last WWE show under contract. And the rumors have been over the weekend they're trying to figure out how they're going to write out Ricochet. Ricochet under Vince McMahon versus under Triple H in NXT was severely underutilized and abused. Does he have sometimes a difficulty communicating to the audience on a stick what his thoughts are? Anybody does. If you've ever sat into a microphone, believe me, it is not fun. It is not easy to sit there and talk in front of a microphone. This ain't easy, mind you, anytime I record this. There's sometimes that I want to flub up or F up, and, it's okay. But his in-ring work far exceeds his mic work. And that's, besides that, it sucks. And it doesn't suck for him in regards to the business in general, because he's gonna find his worth at a different company. That's fine. If he stays with WWE and wants to take time off, that's fine too. I do believe long term that if he were to stay with WWE, that Triple H would find glorious purpose in how to use Ricochet versus what we had seen in years past with Ricochet and the Speed Championship, which 3-minute matches are not a bad gimmick. It kind of tells you, hey, these are all essentially beat the clock matches with the championship. But it's been fun to be able to see the moments that Ricochet has had, especially with Logan Paul in that spot at the Royal Rumble in 2023. Some of the crazy what he has done between NXT. I mean, I fondly remember him flipping over the top rope at Full Sail and landing in front of and walking up to Velveteen Dream, to Patrick Clark. So, do I think this is the last of Ricochet in WWE? Possibly not. But if he's going to take some time to make a bigger name of himself in another company, have at it. He's earned that right. But it'll be interesting to see how they write him off tonight. And to finish today's show, and I'm not going to stay too long on this one, the Scuttlebutt sessions. I like this one. I get to talk about the rumors or things I see and stuff and on Twitter and other things. And we're going to go back to Ricochet. And we're going to talk a little bit about tribalism. And I'm not doing this to preach anything, mind you. I'm speaking to this, mind you, because as a wrestling fan, I want the business to succeed. I want companies to thrive. I want people to be able to experience different products, because guess what? It makes professional wrestling better when you have a New Japan, an NXT, and WWE at large, a TNA, an AEW, an MLW, a GCW, so on and so forth. WXW in Germany, ICW in Scotland, Stardom, New Japan, Marigold, All Japan, Professional Wrestling Noah in Japan. When you have a Baskin Robbins of professional wrestling companies you can watch from, we should all favor the wrestler. We don't have to like the double W slashes of the WWE or the slanted AEW, gold and black AEW sign, or the harken back to NWCW looking TNA logo, or and these aren't disses. We don't have to like the letters of the company. We don't. But these people are, and I forgot the NWA. I am sorry, Billy Corgan and the fine folks that work there. EC3, their champion, and so on and so forth. But these men and women who go in that 20 by 20 square, jumping off a top rope, through a table, flaming table, announce table, off a ladder, into a cage, off a cage, street fighting amongst the gentry, the common folk, those common folk. They're feeding their families. They're employed. They're able to put Christmas presents under the tree for their loved ones. They're being able to make things happen for their own families, so those extended members of the family have a better life. We all, whether it's a podcast or a TV show or talk radio such as Busted Open and Pro Wrestling Observer on the weekends, just to name a few, or the podcasts that are in the Apple Store and Google Play, we all understand and respect the damage and the toll that these men and women put on their bodies. So if they want to go to another company, let them and support them. Like I said, you do not have to go to an AEW show because you like AEW. But there might be a Malachi Black or a Ricky Starks or Kofi Kingston or CM Punk or Tasha Steelz or Nick Gage or Top Dollar or Gabe Kidd, who, threatened to fight the Rock and somebody else the other day. I can't even remember. Roman Reigns, I think it was. And legitimately beat them. I don't know why. It's wrestling. But at the end of the day, where Ricochet goes, and if Samantha Irvin wants to follow, hey, cool. It's a loss for WWE. It's a game for somebody else. But at the end of the day, wrestling is a business, and people have to support their families. People have to eat. People have to put food on the table, clothes on bodies, and shelters over heads. And if you're not down to that, I'm not going to say those two words. I'll just harken back to what James Storm said many times. Sorry about your damn luck. Let's see here. Who else? Alleged rumor that Ryback is going to get signed by AEW. If he does, cool. Have at it. Let him run through your roster like everybody else that shows up 15, 18 times a year does. And I say that because a lot of times the established faces that you do want to see aren't there versus getting to see new talent. And that's fine. But, like they say in the real world, not in the professional wrestling world, but in the real world, hint, hint, wink, wink, what you say can be adverse to a employer, to somebody who is, looking to enhance your strengths, diminish your weaknesses, and make you look like $1 million. Hopefully this second run into a major company will help him. If it doesn't, well, that's on him. I wish him luck. I still haven't blocked on Twitter or X or whatever you call that social media platform because I just really don't want to see his nonsense. But if he succeeds, if he is indeed going to TNA, then good on him. I hope the best for him, like I hope for anybody else. You know, there are a lot of professional wrestlers in both companies I don't like. You know, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is, the 3 F's. At the end of the day, does 3 F's matter to that woman or that man putting their body on the line? Yes, we are there to watch a live action gladiator sport, whether predetermined, choreographed, whatever you want to call it. But we're there because we have a human interest in seeing such action. That, you know, in some companies, we can take a child and they can have fun. Or in other companies, pizza cutters might be a little too far a bridge to travel sometimes. Not saying anything negative, Nick Gage and GCW, but you know, some companies cater to one side, other companies cater to others. Tony Khan caters to sickos. I mean, mind you, that's a movie line that he's quoting. But at the end of the day, enjoy your cup of tea in regards to where you go. Don't shit on your plate either. Because I guarantee you, the more you stack on that plate, the faster they're going to be to shove it right back in your face. Let's see here. Is there any other drama or anything going on? No, I don't believe so. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close this Monday edition of From the Cheap Seats Wrestling Podcast. My name is Chris Branson. Obviously, real quick on the thing right there. I don't know, my finger. Yeah. Yep, there. There we go. Make sure that you follow me on the X, the Twitter machine, as Bully Ray likes to call it. And subscribe to my YouTube page right there, my YouTube channel there. So you can get these videos every day, 7 days a week, if you want. I mean, I'm going to try to work 7 days. It's a little hard to come with that much wrestling content, but I'll try. But, you know, 3 is just fine if I can get 3 done. But please do follow, share if you would like. There is a donation spot in my Twitter. I believe it has a handle to other third-party apps to where the money is going. But like I said, if I can get a veteran-owned businesses to sponsor me, if I can get professional wrestling companies to allow me to interview their talent, to kind of get their companies over, to get their talent over, and to build a bigger audience for their company, come message me, talk to me. I am more than open to speaking on said thing. With that being said, this has been Chris Branson from the Cheap Seats Wrestling Podcast. Wishing you a great Monday. I'll see you again hopefully Wednesday. Talk to you soon.